From 1989 to 1995, Nurse Kristen Gilbert murdered 4 of her patients at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Massachusetts, and she's suspected of killing dozens more. On Mind of a Monster, a podcast from ID, criminal psychologist Dr. Michelle Ward dives into Kristen Gilbert's twisted mind to try and find out why she killed her patients and how she was able to do it in front of her colleagues. She speaks with detectives, journalists, nurses, and victims' families to unpack Gilbert's life and crimes on Ward C. Listen to Mind of a Monster, The Killer Nurse, wherever you get your podcasts.
Episode 25 of The Messenger, the Rachel Cantor Scam. There's no video episode for this one. While there is a version on YouTube, it's just my side of it. Mark was unable to join on video. Earlier this season, I played my interview with Mark, which had been recorded over the summer of 2024. Really, it was, 16 months ago at this point. That interview was over a year old by the time it came out. Much has changed for him, and in all truth, for this story as well. Since the interview, Rachel's been hard at work building a case against Mark to get him not just arrested, but to put in prison. Let's get into it, Mark. When you think about it, you and I recorded that, and basically after the first season was done. We did it last summer. Over a year has transpired since then, and all of this stuff has come up since then that I've been talking about, right? I'm talking about the fake text messages. I'm talking about the acid attack. I'm talking about all this other stuff. The thought that you haven't seen your kids in 18 months. I've gone from telling my story to wanting to help you fight to get your kids back and to tell your story. So on July 4th or 5th of last year of 2024, you and the daughter formerly known as Madison went to Sacramento to buy a dog.
Right. Rachel had taken our Frenchie, and I had a friend that was looking to rehome one of her own, and so we drove up there the day after 4th of July.
You were in a knee scooter at that point. You had broken your ankle a month before as well. Is that right?
Right. So I was a little handicapped at the time.
While you were in Sacramento, Rachel called the Atascadero police because she was at the Rite Aid, and she claimed that someone had poured acid on the handle of her door, and she got a chemical burn.
Right. So while I was in Sacramento, I actually got a call from my attorney asking me where I was. And I said, I'm up north. We're picking up a dog. It was about 2:30, maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And she said, okay, because Rachel just claimed that you put acid on her hand at the pharmacy. And I said, well, it wasn't me. I'm up here, so I don't know how I can be in 2 places at once. What I thought was interesting, though, was that Rachel doesn't even use the Rite Aid pharmacy. She uses Walgreens. I use the Rite Aid pharmacy, so why was she there?
I don't know. And this, by the way, this happened. I have the police report in front of me. The call was placed at 1800, 6 o'clock on the 5th of July, and you were 3.5 hours north.
Right.
I want to talk about what the police said, because this report is really damning. And then I want to share a little something with those of you that are listening, especially those of you that are in SLO. The police report, what Rachel did when she called was she refused medical attention, and she refused a unit to come out. I want you to think about that for a minute. This is a woman who called the police every time she got a fake text message from Mark. Yeah. She went to the police on me twice to report things that I was showing on the Instagram account. This is the most, she's got as I said this morning in that video, she's got law enforcement on speed dial. Like, she doesn't give a shit. She will pick up that phone and dial 911 in a second. Does it surprise you at all?
Well, I think she was looking at that particular incident as a freebie. Like, I'll just make a police report, I'll call it in, and we'll call it good. And I'll just keep racking up these false police reports, and eventually something will happen.
She was building her case against you. Let me read from the second page of the police report. For everyone that is in SLO County, this is really important. I got an issue here with Dan Dow, your district attorney, a guy who I have tremendous respect for. The officer said, unable to substantiate a crime, let alone a restraining order violation, the RP was provided an event number. The RP is the reporting person. The police are saying, listen, not only do we not know that there's a crime that's been committed, but we can't substantiate a violation of the restraining order. Mark's, it's not listed here. I knew, it's funny because you texted me. You and I were in touch at this time. And you said, I just got a call you told me the story on the phone. I'm like, holy shit, are you kidding me? She had no idea you were hours away. It was a physical impossibility. And for Mark, for you, and for those of you in San Luis Obispo, a part of the case against Mark, when I'm screaming about why this nonsense is still going on with the district attorney, I point to this. The district attorney built a case that references, in part, this incident at Rite Aid. You gotta ask yourselves what the district attorney there is doing. What's the guy's name who's prosecuting you? Stanton? Stanton, is that his name?
Yeah.
I met him at your hearing. I introduced myself. I said, listen, what are you doing? You're going after Mark with all this, the fake text messages. He said, well, there's more. I said, well, how about the fact that she wiped her iCloud account out, obstructing justice? And at that point, he said, I'm going to have to direct you to Dan Dow. It was nice to meet you, and he'll treat you as a member of the media because of your podcast, and there's a whole bunch of bullshit, right? Like, you look at the pleading, the case against Mark references the acid attack that you're hearing about. How egregious is that? I mean, listen, you can't answer this question, but why would the district attorney be building a case on something that the Atascadero Police Department told them in their report that they couldn't substantiate it was a violation of the restraining order or even that a crime was committed? This was nonsense.
I think it's a classic case of let's throw crap against the wall to see what we can get stick.
I've never been connected to a case, certainly a case like this. And to look at this case that's being built against you, even still with the text messages, even after everything we've done, I think we're going to talk about this in a minute, what's going to happen in a week, because I'm coming to testify. And the cop that found out that these messages from Rachel were sent by her is going to testify. And it's not going to go well for Rachel. You just got to wonder what they're all thinking about, and hearing that you say it's just a matter of seeing what they can put up against the wall and seeing what sticks is disgusting. I never had any experience enough to say, well, the system just sucks.
I'm giving you firsthand experience right now. It's really the way it is. I mean, it's a numbers game with them. We'll throw as many charges as we can. And we'll see what we can get to stick. And then if they want to fight it, then they'll let you fight it. But more and more, it really it's a numbers game. They're just looking for convictions. They don't really care if it's right or wrong. That's the sense I get.
My feeling for not just for those that are in different parts of the country, but for those in San Luis Obispo, need to rally around Mark and need to take a stand. The DA, what they're doing with Mark is just insane. Let's do this. Let's talk about the text messages again. For those of you that are watching, that are came from Instagram or are new to the story, there's a part of this story with Mark and Rachel when Rachel began to build her case against Mark, where she started to receive text messages, threatening text messages, and those messages were messages that were like, I'm going to end your life. I'm going to do all that. I mean, they're horrendous. I'll read, I can read a couple of them for you. But those messages, when when she filed her restraining order against Mark, they were used in the domestic violence restraining order. And what the Paso Robles Police Department found out, I was thinking they found this out in the fall, Mark. That report, that supplemental report 9, which I'll share with everyone once we're off, was done in March. So let me read a couple of things to those of you that are listening to help you to understand this. But Rachel claimed with family court and with the Paso Robles Police Department, which led to Mark's arrest, that she was being harassed by Mark. As an example, on June 20th of 2024, so, 14 months ago, Rachel shows the Paso Robles Police Department her phone. And there's a message that shows up that says, "You sure look pretty in that blue shirt. I'm watching your every move. You can't have someone with you every moment of every day. Time is almost up for you. If I can't have you, no one will. I promised you that, remember?" So with that message, there were other messages that were allegedly sent to Rachel. When the Paso Robles Police Department began investigating this, and around March, so just a handful of months ago, Paso Robles PD ordered a report from a company called the Pinger Corporation. They own an app called TextFree. It allows you to send texts, a burner app on your phone. It's free. Anyone can get it. Well, when Paso Robles PD pulled that report, they discovered Rachel had signed up for the TextFree app, and there were messages there. So they subpoenaed the records. In those records, I'm going to read this to you so I don't screw this up, so I get it right.
I should also point out that she signed up for that app back in 2016.
Here we go, man to man. If I'm just your buddy and we haven't both been run through the ringer by the same woman, why would your wife need a burner phone?
Well, she was obviously running covert operations for the CIA, and I'm sure it was necessary.
Mm-hmm. She's had that number, as Mark said, since 2016. That's in the police records, by the way. That's going to come up in court. Your hearing, by the way, is next Tuesday, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
Tuesday.
Yes.
So let me read something else for those of you that are listening. So I read you the text message that was sent at 6:52 p.m. The next message that was sent on June 20th at 18:53, a minute later, says test. And then at 18:53, the same moment, 25 seconds after the word test, another message comes through to Rachel's phone. It's the same message. And then a minute later, at 18:55, the test came through again. So she sent herself that message 1, 2, 3, 4 times with the word test in between. That's what the police found. So all of this information, by the way, if you're rubbing your head, all this information from this police report is with the district attorney. And the case against Mark is predicated in part based on those messages, based on the acid attack. So when people start screaming at me like you're just a scorned lover, you're this, you're that, I'm done telling my story. Like, I'll tell my story to those that want to know my story, but I'm here to advocate now for Mark. We need to get his kids back for him. I want to read the rest of the police report. Here's what it says below those messages. By the way, this was written by Detective Steve Boyette at the Paso Robles Police Department. What it says: from Pinger customer information, I learned the following. The name listed on the account as iPhone, the IP address account creation is, and then he gives the IP address. The third-party email address associated with the account is, and he gives Rachel's email address. But Pinger states the email address was not verified. I want to talk about that in a minute. Mark, we're going to talk about that because that's an issue right now. The Pinger username for the other one is a username that was actually your eldest daughter. an address she never had. It's like almost as if Rachel wanted to set the daughter formerly known as Madison up, because at that point she had already cited these. This, by the way, that account, which was allegedly set up by the daughter formerly known as Madison, was assigned on August 1st, 2024. You and I were in court. I was testifying on your behalf in the family court on the 26th. 6 days later, that account is set up and Rachel starts sending herself more text messages. Do you want to know what my theory is, Mark? On that, by the way, why it was set up at that point in time? We're going to take a quick commercial break. I want to encourage you to follow our social media. I'd recommend you follow Instagram. In the show notes, you'll find a link to all of them. There's a lot more information and backup for what I'm discussing. Much of the evidence that I reference in these episodes here, you'll find there. You'll see screenshots, additional commentary in the way of videos. And I also want to encourage you to comment and send along a DM if you've got questions. I answer everything that comes my way. Also, please take a moment to rate the podcast here. Leave a review if you're so inclined. Thanks for following. And this episode will continue after this message.
Hi, I'm Josh Spiegel, host of the podcast Lunatic in the Newsroom. We talk about some of the most important issues, including why potheads torture me with secondhand smoke. Do protesters go to special schools to learn how to protest? Am I the only person who washes his hands after using the bathroom? Should nursing home residents really be allowed to give advice to strange callers? Join me for the most unique look at the news. Lunatic in the Newsroom, wherever you get your podcasts.
Do tell.
I think because the family court, Judge Duffy in Paso Robles, she basically awarded Rachel an extension of the restraining order for a year. So Mark couldn't see his kids for a year from then. It's now been a year and a half or longer. Rachel saw that all of the evidence she put forth was approved.
Yeah.
So what did she do? She started sending herself more texts and doing more things. And then when you talk about setting someone up, she had the judge in her back pocket at that point. Listen, court was ugly. You and Rachel, you were both toxic. There was a lot of stuff that went on, and we could talk about that. I'm not here to bust your chops. I'm here to just talk about this, but court was ugly. She got the judge in her back pocket. I think she set the second group of messages up so that she could then go across the street to the Paso PD and then file the report against you and say, look at what was just accepted as evidence in my family court case, and look at what I'm continuing to get. Even though I was awarded a year extension on the restraining order, he's still texting me. He's still threatening my life. That's my theory.
It's likely, because once she got through the initial set of court hearings and felt like she was winning, she probably used that to bolster her position and felt like it was fortified and decided to move forward with even more damning evidence.
A month after that, you got arrested.
Right. Yep.
And they arrested you. This was not like, hey, we're going to knock on his door and arrest him.
Right.
Do you mind if I...
Go ahead. Please, propound.
Mark was driving down the road and got pulled over in what they call a felony stop, or you were like pulling out a Jiffy Lube, and they surround your vehicle and they pull you out like a felony stop at gunpoint.
With a helicopter.
No way. Really? A helicopter?
Yeah, there was a helicopter there.
Oh my God.
That's what I said to the police. I said, this is all for me? For what?
Based on all this evidence that Rachel fabricated. You sent Rachel a message. Let's just deal with this for a second. You found out that daughter number 2 wasn't yours. And then you started to think there could be fathers of other kids. So you sent her a message. You sent her a message that I think almost anyone would send their wife that was married for 22 years. you sent a message that said, if I find out one more of these kids is not mine, or any one of these 3 or whatever it was, I'm going to spend my life making your life hell. Right? I mean, you can tell me what it was, but something like that, right?
I will spend the rest of my life doing whatever I can to destroy your life the way you've done mine.
You reached out to me in March of 2024, and you sent me this recording that you made of Rachel, you and Rachel in the RV. Mm-hmm. And you asked me, I think at that point, what do you know about my second daughter? And I thought, well, that's odd. And for those of you that are new, Rachel, when she and I reconnected in 2012, when she told me she was no longer with Mark, she told me that she had an SA happen to her, and this child was a product of that. So I said to Mark, I know that she's a product of an attack. I knew that from, 2012. And you said to me, and this is one of those things in these moments when people say, what were the surprises? What are the surprises? The surprise was getting a phone call from you saying, what do you know about my daughter number 2? And what I knew wasn't true. You said, part of that information is true. Number 1, I know who the father is. Number 2, and number 3, you were just finding it out. 17 years you raised this girl. How did you find out? That did she tell you? What is that on the recording that I have? Tell me.
No, it's not. So from the time that I had sent you that recording, I had been reaching out trying to get in touch with Mike Cherry. And he finally, on April 11th, gave me a call, and we had a nice conversation. He was, really apologetic about everything.
I want to stop you for 1 second. Mike Cherry is the guy Rachel had an affair with while she was married to Mark in 2016 and faked pregnancy. He was on an episode of the podcast this season. Rachel said that she was having twins with him and did the same thing minus cancer.
I had learned about Mike Cherry back in March, and when he finally got a hold of me was on the 11th of April. And like I said, we had a conversation. He was, super apologetic, and I was about ready to hang up with him, and before I did, he said, there's something I need to tell you that you should probably know, and that is that she told me back in 2015 that your second daughter was not your biological daughter. And I was floored. I nothing like that had ever even creeped up in the back of my mind with regard to my girls. And so I think I got off the phone with him, and I just kind of went ballistic. I went around the house gathering up all my photographs with Rachel. I threw them in a trash pile in the garage. Like, at that point, I was done. I was just so livid. And she came home that night with the girls. I guess they were out at Russ's house. Yeah, I think she took them over to Russ's. And he said, because at the time I'm still hooked up to an IV, just got home from the hospital, and I was living on the sofa in the living room. And she just came by and said, "Is there anything you need before I go to bed?" And I said, "There's not a fucking thing I ever need from you again." And those were the last words I ever had with her.
So the recording, so I know this, by the way, for those of you listening.
Recording is like 2 weeks before that.
Okay. So for those of you that are listening, the last episode, what I believe, unless she goes to jail, which will be season 3 jail, the last episode of this podcast is going to be a recording that Mark made of a conversation with Rachel 2 weeks before that. By the way, when she asked you that, it must have been around the time she went and got the restraining order. Just saying.
I want to say she probably got the restraining order the very next morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I went through and like I said, I took every picture, photo album, anything that the two of us had ever taken together, and I threw them all in a big trash heap in the garage.
Mm.
And so I think at that point when she saw that, she was like, "Uh-oh, the jig is up."
But what, at some point she had to figure that people were going to figure it out. She had to know you and I had been in touch. She didn't know what the information share was. The women at the airport.
Yeah, she might have been, thinking that, but that was definitive proof because on my way out to Orange County the next day, I sent her that nasty text message, and I just basically said, if I find out that either one of these two girls are not my biological children, I will spend the rest of my life making your life as miserable as you have made mine.
She never counted on you and I connecting in the way that we've connected.
No,
right?
Not at all. Not at all.
I don't blame you for the hurt and anger you must have felt. I don't think anyone anywhere would, regardless of the rest of the story, to find out 17 years after the fact. And by the way, when I made a video about this, I said, Rachel, it's time to tell your daughter that she's not Mark's. And I Mark for a year. You know this. My friend Matt, people are saying, don't do it. Don't keep that. That's not yours to share. And then eventually I said, it's going to come out. It's going to be in the court case. I think what you were going to do is you were going to ask for a DNA test. And that's when I said, you know what? I'm making a video. So I make a video and I say, daughter number 2, Mark is not your father. Ask your mom to tell the truth. And, my smarmy, sarcastic asshole way, I do that. Well, I get a message from someone who knows somebody who it's like Better Call Saul. I got a guy who knows a guy, and that guy knows a guy, and that guy knows that daughter number 2 was told by Rachel that she's a victim of SA. So I'm like, I have to do another video. Like, I feel compelled, like I'm in a pissing contest with Rachel to get her to listen, if you're going to not tell me the truth, that's fine. But your daughter's going to know that I know who her father is. And that's what I did. I made another video and I said, Rachel told daughter number 2 that she's a victim. Daughter number 2, I have your real father's name. I have his address. I have his phone number. And if you want to talk to him, you can find me. And maybe I was being an asshole, but I felt like she's how many lives does she have to ruin? Like at some point you got to stand up and go, cut the shit. I'm getting in the middle of this. This is no longer the Rachel cancer scam. This is Mark and Rachel and Russ and the daughters and what she's done to your mother and your brother and your family, which I never talk about, and what she's done to her own family, Sherry, telling me that Sherry was deceased. At some point while all this was going on, while you had found out about me and about Russ, you pulled the RV that you guys have together into the driveway and you lived in the RV while she and the girls lived in the house so that you were nearby, but you weren't you didn't have to sleep in the bed with the devil. And
no, I had not been sleeping with the devil for quite some time.
Yeah. So you had a conversation with Rachel one night, which led to the recording. Why don't you share that with everyone while I get another drink? Mark, the floor is yours. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark.
Oh, thank you. So the night before the recording, I had a long conversation with Rachel. We had been going through the precursor to divorce, discussing what we were going to divvy up and how we were going to separate things and who was going to live where and which kid was going to live with who. And towards the end of that conversation, Rachel got really upset and then decided to throw herself on the floor. And it was pretty shocking to see that because I'd never experienced what I just witnessed. And I felt like she was possessed by the devil because that's kind of what it looked like. Like her body was just thrown to the floor. And it really freaked me out. And so I had a conversation with my brother the next day, and he advised me, make sure that you record any conversations that you have with her moving forward, because it sounds like she is trying to make it look like you are abusing her, and that's why she would have thrown herself on the floor. And so from that day forward, any conversation that I had with her, I made sure to have my iPhone nearby, and so I would just record any interaction just to kind of cover my butt. And so the next day she came out to the RV, and I think this particular night I was feeling really sick, but we ended up talking for about an hour, and I recorded the entire conversation. She was talking about taking the girls to Cancun for spring break and asked me if I wanted to go, and I'm like, no, I don't want to go. So I ended up sending them to Cancun.
On your dime, by the way. She flew with benefits, but your dime, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was paid for by me, but so they went to Cancun and I went to the hospital.
Unbelievable.
That's pretty much it.
Unbelievable. So this tape, what is on this tape are things that are exceptionally damning, including her admission of why she cheats, why she does what she does. I'm not going to let the cat out of the bag. But at one point you question her about Mike Cherry. I don't know who that is. You know, everyone's heard me talk about this.
Our interview with Mark will continue next week. Please don't forget to leave us a rating and a review, and check out our YouTube channel. Subscribe there as well. There's much in the way of content there that's not here on the podcast. We'll see you next week for part 2 of the interview with Mark on The Messenger, the Rachel Cancer Scam.